Hello everyone. Today I'll be doing my presentations about the rights of refugees peoples in Australia. The rights and obligations for refugees in Australia. Uh, the government obligation to the rights of refugees people in Australia. The government is obligated to promote and protect human rights and the freedoms of refugees based on several relevant human rights instruments and legislations, including the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights, United Nations Conventions relating to the status of refugees, international conventions on the protections of the protection. UDHR. Australians is a signatory to the Universal Declarations of Human Rights UDHR, which set out the basic human rights and freedoms that individuals are entitled to, including refugee. UNHCR 2023. According to Blind Gameloft Hassan 2020, the Australian government is obligated to promote and protect their rights, including the right to life, liberties and securities of persons, freedoms of expressions and associations, and the right to works and education. The other point is about refugees' rights. The refugees in Australia have got the right to asylum, protections against refoulement, access to education, healthcare and employment, non-discriminations, access to justice. On the same point, according to Bunch 2020, immigrants should have access to basic services including education, healthcare and employment without discrimination. The Australian government has an obligation to all individuals concerning the issues of refugees in Australia. All the individuals in Australia should respect the human rights of refugees, advocate for human rights, report human rights violations if they see any violation to the refugees people in Australia. The peoples in Australia are obligated to report those incidences to the authority, to the relevant authority, and also to educate them on human rights, educate the individuals on human rights, so that they'll be able to have the knowledge on how to protect and maintain human rights, fosters a culture of human rights. The other issue is advocate for human rights. Free 2020 claims that individuals can promote human rights by by advocating for them in their personal and professional lives, as well as their communities and broader society. There is legal consequences from the government for those people who do not abide with the rights of the refugees in Australia. Those consequences include the government that those consequences to the government include the government that fail to abide by human rights standards can face a range of legal consequences, both domestically and internationally. Some of the legal consequences for governments include domestic litigations, international litigation, diplomatic pressure, economic consequences, and loss of reputation. According to Joseph 2020, governments can be held accountable for human rights violations in international courts and tribunals, such as the International Criminal Court or International Court of Justice. This can result in financial penalties and sanctions. Consequences for the individuals in Australia. The peoples that do not abide with these rules and regulations in Australia can face charges in criminal charges, civilian investigation, professional consequences, and social consequences. The other issue is about protection against human rights abuse for the refugees people in Australia. Individuals who engage in human rights violations such as torture, forced labor, or discriminations can be charged with criminal offenses and face penalty, including imprisonment or fines. Consequences for organizations. There is also consequences for organizations that does not follow the rights of refugees in Australia. These these consequences include civil litigation, criminal charges, regulatory consequences, reputational damage, and economic consequences. The other issue is regulations. Organizations that violate human rights may face regulatory consequences such as fines or loss of license. Complex issues in human rights. According to Fitzpatrick 2021, granting human rights to immigrants to be a complex issue that can give rise to various challenges and complex such as immigrations may not have the same legal rights and protections as citizens, balancing the need to provide to immigrants while addressing concerns of citizens. Continuation from the above, ensuring that the communication rights of immigrants are respected while also addressing the concerns of different stakeholders can be politically challenging task. Immigrants may have different cultural norms and practices that can clash with the values and beliefs of the host society. Also, 2020 claims that immigrants in Australia face some of the challenges they face are social exclusion, discriminations, and xenophobia. Those are the references that I have referenced my answers from. Thank you everyone, and goodbye.